I wonder what they're talking about at the Hunter Valley this morning, because Phil Rothfield today writes in the Daily Telegraph that the delayed sale of the Newcastle Knights has led to these outrageous discussions within the NRL that they could possibly shift the Newcastle Knights to the Western Brisbane corridor, Ipswich, Logan City, which they've spoken about a long time, which will happen, but surely not at the expense of the Knights. Well, I've heard the rumours during the last couple of weeks, but I dismissed them offhand. But well, the discussions keep getting louder, and we've got Buzz on the line right now to talk about, well, if this could really happen. And Buzz, welcome to the Grill Team.
Yeah, good day, guys. Absolutely outrageous, I wrote this morning. And what this shows, Matty, is that, look, the NRL are employing consultants, business types in positions of power who don't understand the heritage, the culture of the game, the value of the Newcastle Knights in the Super League war. The fact that they stayed loyal to the ARL is the fact we still have an NRL. And look, I spent the first 20 years growing up in Newcastle. I know what rugby league means to the town. It's bigger than the old BHP. It's bigger than the Vineyards. It's bigger than anything. And they cannot touch this club.
Buzz, at the moment, and you're right that it appears as though they're trying to force the hand of the West group. West Newcastle, a very powerful Leagues Club group up there, who they want to buy the Knights. But let's say, for instance, Buzz, that the West group don't step forward and buy the Knights. Could this happen? Yeah,
well, it could happen, but just to background your listeners, West Leagues Club are as big as any club in the state. You know, they run a hotel there, they've got world-class restaurants, swimming pools, etc., etc. And they are in a position to step in and save the club, but they are a successful business because they've got smart people running it, and they're not going to pay over the odds for the Knights. They want them in Newcastle as much as anyone else. They're going through a negotiating stage, but to threaten to move and to think they'd fall for that, the dummy, is just ridiculous.
Buzz, a couple of questions. How much would the Knights cost if West needed to buy it, or if someone wanted to buy it? And who is it at the NRL that are sort of throwing these things around? It just seems ridiculous.
Well, they've got a negotiating team, and in the background, and that's what I've been critical of since the Dave Smith era, that they don't have people with more rugby league now, going through the process. Like, look, I don't know what the club's worth. I do know they have, say the salary cap goes to 10 million, the clubs will now be getting 13 million. So if you can't run a successful business with 3 million up front after you've paid the players, your sponsors, your crowds, all your marketing, all your merchandise, you shouldn't be running a business. So I think, West are just playing hardball. They're a very successful club, as I said. It'll eventually get settled, and I'm pretty sure they'll own the club, but just don't threaten to move them.
As Gus mentioned, Buzz, who are the people that are behind this move? Who do want to move the Knights up into the western part of Brisbane?
Well, I think the Independent Commission got together with Todd Greenberg and said, look, we have to get the biggest price we possibly can. So when we're talking to potential buyers, we've got to say to them, look, unless you guys step in, we want another team in Ipswich. Look, it was never going to happen. It won't happen. As Matty said yesterday in the paper this morning, it's just complete and utter garbage. They even brought it up, and look, I'm sure they'll remain there. Mind you, Ipswich is a great place for a new side, but if it does happen and they are going to relocate, there's 9 teams in Sydney, and sadly one of them should go.
And there's no doubt, Buzz, in my opinion, to relocate a Sydney side, or indeed Newcastle side, as we said, won't happen. But even if push come to shove and the ridiculous happened, that they moved it up there, the question is, would would Brisbane accept a side that's been relocated from Sydney? For the Brisbane people, they'd always be a Sydney or a Newcastle club.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? And it happened with the Northern Eagles when you brought them together, and it just didn't work out. And look, TV bosses want a fourth Queensland team because they rate very high in Brisbane and throughout Queensland. And, there's no question that the NRL would get more money from their TV deal, next one, because they're going to get higher ratings from the fourth Queensland side, but not at the expense of the Newcastle Knights. As I said this morning, they'd march from Mayfield to Merriweather to Moore Park, and it'd be far more bitter, far bigger than what happened when Southwood kicked out in '99.
Have the NRL got enough money to play the long game with this if Newcastle did go up for whatever reason? Bit like the Swannies moved up from South Melbourne and took 20, 25 years, but now they're a part of the fabric. We don't look upon the Sydney Swans as anything but the Sydney team. Like, have they got enough dough and have they got enough patience to be able to play the longer game?
Oh, look, I don't know if they've got enough dough because we've seen how poorly the game's been managed financially, that, they have nothing in the bank, and this is why they've been at war with the clubs for the last 12, 18 months. So, look, they're losing money on the Knights. As I explained, once this new funding model comes into play, which will be next year, they should be better off, and, they won't have to bail out clubs because they're giving them so much money in the first place.
Buzz, appreciate your time this morning.
Oh, thank you, Matty, as always.
Yeah.
Thanks, Buzz.
I tell you, boys, won't happen. Like, knowing the community up there, as Buzz said,
you'd lose the whole... They wouldn't go for another team, would they?
It's a simple solution. You just set up a new team up there.
They would just go and play local... They would just go and watch local rugby league.
Get a new licence, get a new team up there. Don't take a Sydney team up there. It won't work.
They'd set the city on fire, wouldn't they? Novocastrians, if you took the Knights out.
They'd set NRL headquarters on fire first.
Probably not their own city, yeah. That wouldn't make a lot of sense, would it?
It'll come down to Moore Park.